Hi, in this video, we'll explore the piece Islam and the Challenge of Democracy by Khaled Fadl, published by Boston Review and later by Princeton University Press. My name is Sabah Fatma, and I'm a professor of philosophy at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. Abou Fadl argues that constitutional democracy is the best form of government suited to promoting the values central to Islam. When properly interpreted, Islamic moral commitments not only support a constitutional democratic system, they demand it. Here's how he structures his argument. The central problem is that democracy locates its sovereignty in the people, while Islam, like other religions, locates its sovereignty in God, creating an apparent contradiction. So how can divine sovereignty be reconciled with popular sovereignty? Abou Fadl says that political systems should be judged by underlying moral commitments, not by their historical forms. Therefore, we should compare Islam and democracy at the level of values, not institutions. Islam contains core political, ethical commitments to justice, consultation, which would be Shura, and mercy. And it is these values that provide the normative principles that can guide Islamic political system. Islam does not mandate a single fixed political system. So governments should be judged by how well they realize these three values. So what system does it best? Abou Fadl says democracy, especially constitutional democracy with rights and accountability, because it provides equal participation, it protects rights, and holds rulers accountable. But why, from an Islamic perspective, should every person have equal political rights? He points to the Islamic concept of vice-regency or khalifa. The Quran says, God made humans as viceroys and representatives on earth. In the article, he quotes the Quran as saying, quote, "Remember when your Lord said to the angels, I have to place a vice-regent on earth," end quote. The idea is that every single human shares this moral responsibility to enact God's will towards justice. So political equality reflects the equal moral worth and responsibility that God has given each of us. Democracy gives each person a voice in shaping collective life, which is exactly how humans exercise their role as God's representatives. Now, here's where he dismantles a common authoritarian claim. If humans are fallible, and we are, then no person and institution can ever claim perfect knowledge of God's will. So any ruler or state that claims divine authority is making a false claim. That kind of authoritarian theocracy where rulers are unaccountable because they claim to speak for God is usually illegitimate in Islam. But doesn't democracy risk the tyranny of the majority? Abou Fadl says, yes, which is why democracy must be constitutional and not purely majoritarian. Individual rights must be protected. He argues that Islam actually affirms pluralism. The Quran says that God made people grouped into different tribes and nations so that we could all come to know one another and learn from each other. Diversity is a divinely intended value, not a threat. So democratic protections for dissent and pluralism align with Islamic values. And when you look at traditional Islamic jurisprudence, it already protects things like property, intellect, religion, honor, dignity. That's the foundation for a rights-based governance. Now, he doesn't pretend this is easy. The biggest tension remains. What if the people vote to override the divine law? He distinguishes between Sharia, which is the divine ideal, and it's perfect and exists in God, and Fiqh, which is the human interpretation of that ideal. All human law is interpretive and fallible. So when a state enforces law, even one based on religious texts, that law is state's law. It's not God's law, because God's law is perfect and unchanging, and human enforcement is never perfect. As he puts it in the article, quote, "A religious state law is a contradiction in terms," end quote, which means no government can claim its laws are divine law. Instead, the state's job is to pursue justice and mercy and the core divine values using the best tools that we have. So where does that leave us? Abou Fadl concludes that a constitutional democracy protects rights and ensures accountability and is not only compatible with Islam, but that it may be Islam's most faithful political expression. Not because democracy is perfect, but because it best honors human dignity, enables consultation, that is Shura, and holds power accountable and forces us to never confuse our human laws with divine perfection. Wishing radical care for our communities and solidarity in our shared struggles.